Thank you very much mula ho sa Hong Kong. Okay? Kumakain ng tanghalian kasi tanghali sa kanila. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening po sa lahat ng ating mga kababayan sa buong mundo. Ayun. Okay? Yan yung mahalagang ating... Sandali, double ko rin dito sa ating MAP ni TV kung naririnig na rin tayo. Ayun. Okay na. Ox na pala. Ayun. Aha. Ayan. Salamat po. Naku, meron akong ipaparinig sa inyo. Maganda po ito eh. Meron po akong ipaparinig sa iyo at kaya ko yung title ko yan eh. Yun ay aking sariling opinion. Baka magalit na naman yung mga ano. Magaling si Pbbm. Pang-international talaga. Okay? Pang-international talaga. Okay? O yung mga Duterte supporters. O yung mga nag-aalanganin pa't ayaw pa rin maniwala na si Presidente magaling. Ito ipaparinig ko sa inyo. Napakahalaga po nitong meeting na ito. Kasi ano ito? ASEAN Editors and Economic Forum. Ayan Economic Forum. So, pang-professional, pang-business ang topic. Association of Southeast Asian Editor and Economic Forum. Editor Economic Forum, as pinaiksilang ASEAN. At iba yung mga sagot. Walang binabasa. Pati yung nag-i-interview, pati yung audience, nagulat. Ng isang araw lang ito, kahapon ba? O parang tama. Di ba? At kaya alam niya ang ginagawa niya. Para sa akin, hindi siya mahinang presidente. Siya ay nagtatrabaho at meron siyang alam na presidente. Hindi lang pang-national, pang-international. Ito ang kailangan nating presidente. Kaya mga Duterte supporters, manood kayo para magkaroon kayo ng idea. Ang susunod na presidente, hindi pwede yung puro tapang. Hindi yung puro siga-siga lang. Hindi yung puro biyahe-biyahe lang. Kailangan may laman. Hindi pwedeng wala nito. Kung may ulo, wala naman laman, walang kwenta. Dapat may laman. Huwag hindi ulo na, hindi utak bulalo. Kailangan utak para sa kinabukasan ng Pilipino. Diba? Kaya, hindi po ako tagapagsalita ng gobyerno. Hindi po ako konektado sa gobyerno. Pribado akong mamamayan. Influencer lang tayo. Political vloggers. At tayo po ay nagbibigay ng mga opinion, interpretation, analysis at suggestions sa mga nangyayari. Di ba? Ayan. Okay? So, tingnan natin. Ito, pakinggan nyo. Kayong mga nagsasabi kung ano-ano, maawa naman kayo sa inyong mga anak at inyong pamilya. Kung wala kayong awa sa inyong sarili, huwag na inyong idamay ang inyong mga pamilya. Ang kailangan natin ay may sapat na kaalaman, may puso para sa bayan. Ito yan Papakilala po.
As the Philippines begins its 2026 ASEAN chairship, we enter a pivotal year for our nation and the region.
Pinapakilala lang ho si Pangulong Marcos. Thank you sa RTBM,
the Philippines' dynamic
Office of the President.
Story, anchored in resilience, driven by reform and aligned with...
Ayan si Pangulong Marcos.
Mr. President, how are you feeling today?
Oh, much better than I was maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Ayan
We are
healthy.
glad that you're in good health.
Healthy ang
And thank
Pangulo.
you so much for spending time with us and talking about the Philippine dynamic growth story.
Yun.
Well, it has certainly been an exciting
Pakinggan
time
po
for the
ninyo.
Philippines.
Ang talino sumagot.
In many
Walang
senses,
binabasa.
Because we have really approached the entire system of governance, especially as it pertains to the economy, by making serious structural changes in the way that we do business. And of course, like any large change that is being attempted, it is not an easy thing to do. The bureaucracy is a very, I think I characterize it as being akin to one of these very large tankers where you turn the wheel and it takes 10 kilometers for it to actually start moving. And my experience has been a government bureaucracy is very much like that. And so it's much of the frustration comes from an impatience. Can we not move this faster? Can we not move this? Can we not get this done much more quickly? And so that is part of the structural changes that we're talking about. The structural changes that we are trying to make in terms of the way government works, but also in being able to respond more quickly. And to that wheel, when we turn the wheel, let's just say we have decided to change direction or take on a new policy, how to be able to adjust much more quickly than we are able to adjust now. So it's a very interesting problem. It's a difficult problem, but it's an important thing that we have to do. And I think we are beginning
Walang
to
binabasa,
have
ang galing, no?
success.
And Mr. President, when you're turning that wheel, some say it's Pawi steering. It's perspiration steering.
Yeah, well-
Are we now moving more towards power steering?
I should hope so.
Faster reforms.
I hope so. I think that is certainly one of the aims of what we are trying to do. We have we view the global economy in very many ways, in that there is a great deal of volatility, as we have seen in the past years, and in fact it was we had hoped that after COVID that things would calm down and that we would set directions and we would slowly just move in those directions, or not so slowly, quickly move down that road that we have set for ourselves. However, the shocks have come in, and unexpected, not only in the economic world, but also in the political world, the geopolitical world. And I remember very early on in the administration, I would always describe the geopolitical situation in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, in the South China Sea, as the most complicated geopolitical situation in the world. Boy, was I wrong. That changed very, very quickly. And so now we are surrounded by these geopolitical upheavals. And so there is one of the main things that we are striving for is to provide stability and to be able to say that whatever shocks, we should learn from our COVID experiences. We should also learn from the experiences that we are now presently going through to be able to say that we are more robust, and no matter what happens, that we are able to be resilient, and we are able to adjust. And that is what we are trying to do. So there is an element of stability and robustness. And however, as I have just explained, the world has brought upon us many changes.
Yeah.
So there's also a need to be agile. So that is the balance that we have to find.
So, Mr. President, how are you providing this stability for the Philippine economy?
For the Philippine economy, what we have tried to do, of course, is that, in my view, one of the most important elements of that, well, political stability, of course, is at the very heart of it. But more than that is we have to change the ways that we do business. Now, we have been talking about the global economy for a very long time now. And certainly, it is very much the case. But we in the Philippines have really been dependent on traditional or established markets, investors, and that has had to change. And the change is that we then go to, first we do business in a different way in the world today. So must the Philippines, and that's the change. Those are the changes that we are trying to do. Secondly, we need to go out into the world a great deal more. For example, what I describe it as that we have to engage non-traditional suppliers, non-traditional investors to be part of the Philippine economy. And when I say non-traditional, what I mean by non-traditional is non-traditional to the Philippines. The countries that we have not really traded with before, areas, regions that we have not really engaged before. And sometimes the reason that we haven't done that is simply because of physical distance. We are now talking a great deal more to the EU, but as a trading bloc. But also we are doing a lot bilaterally with the different countries that are EU members. Latin America also presents a great opportunity, and we are trying to engage as well, considering that there is such great commonality between the Philippines and the Latin American countries. I often describe the Philippines as the only Latin country in Asia. And I think that is to our benefit, and we should take advantage of that, and we should build on that. So there are Canada is now become one of our strongest partners. France will be one of our strongest partners, I believe. So these are non-traditional for the Philippines in terms of trade, and that we have to engage that. And that it goes over as well into the question of stability. And when we talk about commerce, trade, what the businessmen, what investors are looking for is stability and vision. You need stability so that, and you have to have a vision, you have to have a plan, you have to have a goal. And that can be that is recognizable to prospective businesses, that they see, okay, this is what the Philippines wants to do, and these are the things that the Philippines is doing to try to achieve that goal. We should be part of that, and that is the kind of that is the way that we are trying to make the Philippines, that we are making it is succeeding, that we are making the Philippines a more investor-friendly and more investor-attractive country.
You talk about investor-friendly, you talk about political and economic stability. When I talk to foreign investors, Mr. President, they're always telling me about the ease of doing business.
Yes.
The number,
Yeah.
not dozens,
Yeah.
but the hundreds of signatures that you need to be able to get, let's say, things done.
Yeah.
Right? They say it's about 200 to 300 signatures.
Yeah.
While in Singapore, it only takes 1 to 2 days to sign up. I lived in Singapore for many years. And then in Thailand, it takes about 2 months. In Vietnam, how can we align the ease of doing business with our ASEAN neighbors?
Singapore is just a touch smaller than the Philippines. So maybe in that sense there is a... But of course that is a perfectly valid statement. That's a perfectly valid insight. And it really, the bureaucracy, that's why I mentioned the bureaucracy earlier, has been one of the main, shall we say, roadblocks to quicker processing and simple things. Things like we were in a meeting the other day. The things like getting a copy of your birth certificate.
Yes.
And we went through the process of saying, how does it go and how long does it take? And it takes a month, maybe a month and a half. Why would it take a month and a half? Because again, you have to go through this entire process, which is very slow, and it's still done by hand. The files are still in handwritten form, and so that's why we are trying to fix that, and we are minimizing now the necessary contact between the citizen and the government for anything that they do. And we are relying very much on the new technologies, on the internet, because we are 7,600 plus islands. And it is too much to ask for somebody who is living on a relatively isolated island to find a way to go to the regional center, go to the government office there, and get the documents that they have. But we have this advantage, we have this technology, we have this for the Philippines, for a country like the Philippines, which as I said is a very large archipelago. I think we are the second most islands in the world, only following Indonesia. And for us, that is a godsend, and we fully intend to make full use and maximize the use of those technologies. And we now have what we call the eGov app, which is an application which allows you over the internet to get in touch with different government agencies, and in that way do your business online. And you know we are for example, our personal identification, our IDs. 70% now, is it 70% of our personal IDs are now digital. And that's something that you can get immediately just by filling out the form. Then the remaining 30% is those people who still insist on having a physical ID. That's that kind of sort of thinking, I guess, will eventually change. It's a generational thing, it really is. You still pull your wallet out and want to show your ID. But now, the younger generation from millennials onwards, are finding it much easier to adapt to that and prefer it. And so these are the kinds of things that we are trying to do. On the ease of doing business, again, it's the bureaucracy that gets in the way. And the necessity for having all these forms. You know, you wait in line for 2 hours, 3 hours. You know, this is your day is gone. You wait for 2-3 hours, you get one signature, and you say thank you, and they say, okay, now you have to go to the other office, which is across town, and then with a wonderful traffic, you know, that takes another hour and a half. It is across town to get another signature, and you get another signature and another signature. For example, to register a new corporation, we looked it up, and the number of signatures.
Wait lang. Napansin po yung mga kaibigan, wala siyang binabasa. On the spot yung kanyang sagot doon sa tanong. Muli, inuulit ko, ASEAN Editors and Economic Forum po ito. Pang-international na usapin tungkol sa business. Alam na alam po ni Pangulong Marcos kung ano ang trabaho ng isang Pangulo. Paano hawakan ang isang ganitong sensitibong posisyon. Alam niyo sa totoo lang, kung ang mga Pilipino lang ay nagkakasundo at suportahan si Pangulong Marcos, huwag pag-interesang agawin ang kapangyarihan, may pag-asa tayong mga Pilipino. Kasi bihira po itong ganitong presidente na alam ang lahat halos kung paano pagandahin ang ekonomiya. Sinisira lang ng mga gustong maging Pangulo na wala sa lugar. Dahil ang kanilang layunin, maghawak ng kapangyarihan at pera lang. Si Pangulong Marcos hindi ganon. Siya inilagay, may mandato sa taong bayan, elected president, at alam niya hindi tayo nagkamali kung ano kanyang magagawa at dapat gawin. Wala po siyang binabasa dyan. Ayoko lang ipakitang buo yung mga video kasi baka maka-copyright po ako kahit na alam ko namang hindi naman gagawin ito ng RTBM, Radio TV, Malacanang kasi yan po yung official TV communication ng Office of the President na nagko-cover sa Pangulo kahit saan siya magpunta. So, kaya ginagamit natin, official po ito. Hindi ito artificial intelligence o AI. Ito ay on the spot. Walang binabasa. Alam niyo sa bandang huli, mahaba kasi yan eh. Doon sa bandang huli, pati yung mismong nagtatanong sa kanya, nagulat sa kanya. Walang binabasa, walang note, pero direct to the point ang sagot. Napakahaba ng mga explanation kasi may laman ang ulo. Diba? Alam ang kanyang ginagawa. Tapos sasabihin ng mga nangaagaw sa kapangyarihan, mahina ang presidente, ay lukuhin nyo ang sarili nyo. Ang matitinong Pilipino hindi maluloko. Hindi po ako tagapagsalita ng gobyerno. Wala po akong personal na ugnayan kay Pangulong Marcos. Maaaring kilala ko ng Pangulo pero hindi kami nagkikita at nag-uusap. Hindi ako konektado sa kahit anong ahensya ng gobyerno. Pilipino ako, political blogger ako, influencer ako, influencer po ako dito sa aking mga topic dahil gusto kong matulungan for information, for education ang mga Pilipino kung maaari lang lahat sa buong mundo. Kaya lang meron talagang kabaliktaran ng mga ginagawa eh. Si Lord na ang bahala doon. Tuloy natin.
And the number of signatures or forms that you have to fill up are just ridiculous, are crazy. Our model is Singapore. Because in Singapore, all you have, I think it's 2 or 3 documents that you have to go through, and they're all one office next to the other. And that's just like Vietnam, the same thing. And that's why they've become so successful. Vietnam, I know businessmen who've opened businesses in Vietnam from the Philippines, Filipinos who have gone to Vietnam, and they say, you know, we had just dinner with the minister, and the next day we woke up, all the papers were there, we just had to sign, we signed them, we came home, finished. And that's what we are aspiring to do. And that's what, but there is much to unravel, and there is much to undo. Much of the problem comes from, shall we say, a tendency by our legislators to have knee-jerk reactions to things. So when a problem arises, they immediately say, okay, we'll put another level of tests, of checks and balances. And sometimes the checks and balances are lying on top of one another, and they are often, in fact, contradictory. And that is what, and now the bureaucrat, the civil servant, is hesitant to actually just go and just do it and get it done. Because if you really look hard enough, you will find that they have violated something somewhere, some little rule that nobody really pays any attention to, that has no use whatsoever, that has never been invoked, but they are worried. And so this kind of attitude, this kind of atmosphere needs to change. That the best way is the quickest way and the most efficient way. It is not the way that will avoid any trouble, because we will not. That is not what government is about. We're not here to find fault. If, for example, you make a mistake, I'm not going to file an administrative case against you. I'm going to go there and help you and say, why was this a problem?
Wow.
And what can we do to make it better? And that's what we are trying to do with government. And I think in the 10 kilometers that we're waiting, maybe we're about kilometer 8 now. So we're moving, but it's coming along, but much more slowly than we would like for it to be.
Definitely. We would like it much faster to attract new foreign investors into the country. Is this red tape, Mr. President, and this bureaucracy also the cause of why we have fallen even below Vietnam in terms of attracting FDIs? In 2024 alone, there was $230 billion worth of investments in ASEAN. And in the Philippines, we just attracted $10 billion.
Yes.
Is it because of the red tape? Is it the bureaucracy? Because when there's a bureaucracy and things are not digitalized, right, Mr. President, things fall through the cracks.
Yes.
It's all about corruption.
And there's that too. That doesn't help. We have developed a very strange system in the Philippines where you have fixers.
Yes.
Where instead of waiting for 2 to 3 hours in line, and going from one office to another and wasting 3 days of your life trying to get this simple permit, to open a business or some such thing, they have somebody.
Yan ba yung aakusahan nyo na bangag at mahinang presidente? Kung bangag yan, di makakapagsalita ng tuloy-tuloy yan. Napakatindi ng kanyang ng laman ng ulo niya. Itanong nyo sa totoong adik kung makakapagsalita ng diretsyong ganyan. Dahil yung adik, lutang eh. Walang laman ng utak no, puro drugs yun. Tapos sasabihin nyo, adik si Pangulong Marcos, bangag si Pangulong Marcos, hindi niya magagawa niyan kung siya ay bangag. Ginagawa niyan kasi malinis ang utak niya, nasa puso ang sinasabi, at kaya niyang gawin. Pangalawa, alam niya yung trabaho. Alam niyo, hindi ko pinupokus lang yung camera. Lahat ng mga foreigner nandito doon nakakangay. Nasak sila. Ito ba yung sinasabi ng DDS na bangag? Napakatalino pala. Napakagaling pala. Walang binabasa. Tuloy-tuloy. Nagugulat na mismo yung nagtatanong sa kanya. Hindi pa siya tapos, sinasagot na eh. Ituloy natin. Ang sarap pakinggan kung alam nyo. Kung naiintindihan lang ninyo, ang sarap pong pakinggan. I'm proud to be a Filipino. Tandaan nyo yan. Kung hindi ka proud na ganito yung ating presidente, salot ka ng lipunang ito.
Somebody will sidle up to you and say, you give me X amount and I'll fix it. And they're in cahoots with the bureaucrat, with the civil servant. They say, okay, then they'll go there and they say, come on, you rush this one. They rush it, they pay their money, they split the money between the fixer and the guy at the desk. And that's what we want to completely remove. And again, digitalization is going to be the key for us because we are trying to remove in these processes, we are trying to remove as much discretion on the civil servant as possible. For two reasons. Number one, of course, it will make things quicker. It will make things easier. Number two, it will remove that fear from civil servants that they had made a mistake, an honest mistake. And so they're no longer as hesitant because we didn't say yes or no at any point. We just processed a piece of paper and we did exactly as the rules say, or no physical contact, no person-to-person contact at all. And people will fill out the form or fill out the forms necessary. We minimize as well those forms. And they will get it is what they want, a business permit, a license, whatever it is that they need from government. And it needn't be a hard copy, a piece of paper. It can be in the computer that if they choose to, they can print out, or they keep it on their phone and just, as many people have been doing already, just present it wherever it's needed.
So, Mr. President, can we expect full digitalization of government services by the end of your term?
Full digitalization?
Yes.
Certain agencies, certainly. We have prioritized, especially in the health sector. That's been the number one priority because that has been, what happens is that when you ask for assistance from government, the assistance is forthcoming, but the process takes so long that it becomes too late. And the person that's waiting for it died already, or it just didn't bother anymore, or sometimes just didn't bother going anymore, and just got sick and tried to get well at home. And that's a tragedy. So health systems are number one. The in government functions, all of these things like simple permits, IDs, the renewing driver's licenses, and even on a larger scale for the big corporations, the forms that are required to put up a corporation, to enter into a contract with the government or with another commercial entity. All of these things, we look to digitalization to help. And that goes right back to the ease of doing business and make it easier for people to come. And should they decide to invest in the Philippines, then make it easy for them. Now, the other part of the answer to your question about why we, in terms of FDI, we have fallen behind, is also because what the other element of this that I said was vision. We haven't really given a roadmap to our prospective investors about what the Philippines wants to do. Where are the areas? Do you want to go into electric vehicle manufacturing? Do you want to go into mining? Do you want to go into batteries? Do you want to, what is it that the Philippines is going to spend money on? Where is the public expenditure going and why there? And once you are making that clear to investors, there will be investors who say, we should be part of that. We will make money doing that in the Philippines. And then coupled, hopefully, with an ease of doing business, then that will make us more attractive to all our different partners and trade partners around the world.
I think, Mr. President, for many...
Alam po ninyo, itong dating ng mga sagot na ito, explanation ng ating Pangulo. Napakaswerte po ng mga Pilipinong matitino na hindi namumulitika. May pagmamahal sa bayan, may pagmamahal sa pamilya, may pagmamahal sa ating bansa. Itong klaseng ganito, nakaalaman sa isyu ng ekonomiya at good governance sa ating bansa. Ito yung kulang ang 6 na taon. Huwag kayo magagalit sa akin. Personal ko lang opinion yun at paniniwala. Kulang ang 6 na taon sa kanya para maayos ang ating bansa. Kung mayroong nagsasabi dyan na politiko, alam niyo kung sino yun, na dapat daw ay umabot ng 30 taon ang isang presidente para maayos ang ating bansa. Ito yun. Siya yun. Si Pbbm yun ang makakagawa nun. Kaya lang hindi siya ganun. Susunod siya doon sa ating saligang batas na pagdating ng June 30 ng 2028, bababa siya dahil hanggang doon lang ang term. Pero sayang yung talino, ang kanyang kaalaman para sa ating bansa. Pag tayo ay nagkamali, pag kayo nagkamali, pag kayo nagpadala sa mga kalukuhan, magsisisi kayo. Magsisisi dahil maghihirap ang Pilipino. Pag ang naging kapalit ng Pangulo, walang adyenda kung hindi maghiganti, kung hindi magyabang, kung hindi manlait sa kapwa, magmura at kung ano-ano pa, kayo, mga butanteng Pilipino, ang may pagkakamali. Huwag niyong isisi kay Marcos. Huwag niyong isisi kay Pangulong Marcos. Pag nagkamali kayo ng ilalagay na Pangulo sa susunod na taon. Ako sigurado ako hindi ako magkakamali. Dahil kung sino yung mga gustong kumandidato, susuriin ko yan. Hindi ako padadala sa ingay na mga walang laman ang ulo. Parang kawayan, puro ingay, walang laman. Maniwala kayo. Sayang kasi. Tama yung sinabi ng Pangulo, halos nandito na sa ating bansa. Oil, gold, dahil meron tayong 7,500 plus, 600 plus island sa Pilipinas. Pangalawa nga tayo sa pinakamaraming isla sa buong mundo. Ang una dyan ay Indonesia talaga, marami silang isla. Napakarami ng kayamanan dito, kumpleto tayo. May puno, may tubig, may minahan, lahat tayo. Marami mga bansang mayaman pero wala silang tubig. Marami mga bansang mayaman, wala silang sakahan. Lahat ng kailang ginagawa, pagkain at ini-import katulad ng Singapore. Walang sakahan doon. Lahat ng kailang kailangan, ini-import pero napakayaman nila. Ang Middle East, ganun din. Walang taniman sa Middle East, puro buhangin, disyerto. Pero mayaman sila. Oil lang ang kanilang negosyo at saka gold. Tayo lahat meron. May oil, may gold, may tubig, may natural resources, may malawak na isdaan, dagat at kung ano-ano. Ang sa atin lang at nakakasira ay ang sobrang politika. Gahaman sa kapangyarihan at salapi ng bayan yung ibang politiko. Kung lahat lang na politiko ay kasing galing ng ganitong mga programa at ginagawa, ang laki ng potensyal, ang laki ng pag-asa ng ating bansa. Maniwala kayo, talagang mayaman sana ang Pilipinas at yayaman pa kung nasa tamang pamamaraan lang po ang paggawa or pagsunod ng mamamayan. Ginagawa na ang lahat Sinisiraan pa at gusto pang pabagsakin. Hindi nilang mapabagsak sa ibang isyu, pinipersonal pa. Hindi ganyan ang taong bangag. Hindi bangag si Pangulong Marcos. Itanong nyo sa mga nagsasabing adik ang Pangulo. Tanong nyo sa mga lehitimong adik. Hindi ganyan ang adik. Ang adik, lutang. Walang tulog, walang ginagawa, hindi kumakain, walang kaalam-alam, kundi puro adik. Pero ito, sa dami ng trabaho, halos walang tulog sa trabaho, pero diretsaan kung magsalita. Walang kodigo, walang nagdidikta, direct to the point. Inuulit natin, ASEAN Editors and Economic Forum po ito. Worldwide ang audience. Napapanganga yung mga foreigner, black and white na nandoon sa harap ng kanyang interview. Napapailing, napapatanga dahil gulat na gulat sila. Ibang klase pala yung presidente ng Pilipinas. Kaya dapat kung Pilipino ka at may pagmamahal sa bansang ito, ikatuwa natin ito, yung mga baser or maninira at naninira dito sa ganitong klaseng Pangulo, ewan ko lang kung anong pagkatao meron kayo. Si Lord na ang bahala sa inyo. Ituloy natin.
Different partners and trade partners around the world.
I think, Mr. President, for many investors who are also here in this room, what
Yes.
they really want is the sustainability
Yes.
of policies
Yes.
from one administration to another, because there is no
Wait lang
consistency.
po wait lang
Yes.
po.
You know, one administration imposes this type of policies,
Yeah.
your administration. And you have done a lot, Mr. President, in terms of the green lanes, the Create More Act. You've done a lot for to be able to make foreign investors come into the country. But I mean, you have basically 2 years left, so it is important that the next administration follows what you've already started.
And that is why we have to be very, very, that people have to understand very, very well what it is that we are trying to do and what the benefits of what we are trying to do is. We've entered now into an entirely different arena. But the political stability is certainly something that is very, very important. Maybe less now, but of course in our history, there has been that element of small town politics where it really, from, you know, you're in a little town, you are running to be mayor, and you're campaigning against, let's say, the incumbent or whoever, the incumbent. And, you know, you're criticizing the incumbent and saying, you know, what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing, they're this, they're that, they're that, they're that. And they win. And therefore, by necessity, then they have to say everything my opponent did was wrong. So all their projects stop. I have a better idea. I have a better. It's halfway done. The schoolroom is halfway done. All you have to do is put a roof on it. Why don't you just do that? You know, then we'll have a new schoolhouse. But no, and that has filtered up to even at the national level, where whoever went before me, who I opposed, and we have only had presidents only get 1 term, so you will always be opposing the incumbent. So you have to show that everything that this person did in the past was wrong, and that you criticize and criticize and criticize. The wonderful thing about being in the opposition is you don't actually have to get anything to work. All you have to do is criticize. All you have to do is pull your opponent down. And that's the problem that we face. We have to really educate people into what we are trying to do. I'm not here to, I'm not president, you know, to, I don't know, to show off or to whatever, to help certain parts of the economy or friends or relatives. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to do these structural changes so that the Philippines becomes more investment friendly. And we are starting to feel the effects of that, the beneficial effects of that. And then you are able to say, do you want to stop those beneficial things? Because if we do not elect a like-minded president in 2028, all of these will just go by the wayside. Now, one of the things we have tried to do to make those systems more robust is to make them as widespread as possible, number one. And then I'm talking about things like education, healthcare, social benefits, make them so widespread that people immediately feel the benefits, and therefore they will refuse to allow any future leader to stop those beneficial effects. However, when it comes to the economy, that is much more difficult. Because how many economists are there? There's less than 0.01% of the populace are actual economists who look at numbers, who look at the inflation rate, who look at the core inflation, the inflation coming from food products, the inflation coming from fuel, and try to analyze GDP growth, the ratio between debt and the GDP, all of these things. No, who looks at that? No one. Very few people, maybe us, people in this room. Those are the people that look at it. So it's harder to explain. And the only way really to, shall we say, sell your policies is to make people feel the effects of those policies. And that is the short of changing the electoral system. But I think those of you who live here in the Philippines have seen the difficulties that arise when the Constitution is being questioned and that there are suggestions to amend the Constitution. And so these are the difficulties that we find. But as long as we are able to show that these policies and these measures that we have undertaken are of benefit, and then people will say, well, if I feel the benefit, my life is just just that much better because of these things, then I want to keep it. And that's the best way that you can do that. The other way that we've tried to do it is to enshrine them in law. And that's much more difficult to change. So some of these policies are enshrined. Create More is the one that you mentioned. Create More is the amendment that we have to the old Create Act, which is which was an act which was to provide incentives for investors, both on the plus side, incentives in actual tax breaks and things like that, and in sanctions for people who do not follow the rules. And we have actually enlarged it. That's why it has now come to be called the Create More, because there are now more incentives, because there are industries that didn't exist when that law was written, that now are very, very attractive. And I think everyone understands they mostly belong in the digital world, but then there's also mining, which is a traditional industry in the Philippines, which we have not taken full advantage of. That will provide a better, but it's a mix actually of incentives, and also the other element of it is to ease of doing business. The law also circumscribes certain areas where, like you say, there's a green lane where we can get around the bureaucracy. There's a workaround on the bureaucracy. We specify certain areas where we are particularly interested, and we make it easier for investors to go into those areas. Agriculture, again, education, healthcare, mining, and many others. Actually, I made some notes here. There's a very long list, and I don't want to give you an incomplete list, but there is a great deal that we have identified. We have identified, I think, about 19 areas that are going to be the priority, and those priorities will be the ones that we will assist in every way that government can. And not only government. One of the main changes that we have made is to recognize and to immediately say, day one that I came into office, I said, we recognize the private sector as a full and important partner in economic development. Government does many things, but private sector does other things much better than government. Once you recognize that and you engage them, then it becomes much easier. As a matter of fact, there's a lot here, so I have to stop you from talking. Yeah.
Mr. President, I hope you don't mind if I interject, right?
Please do. Don't get me started. We'll be here all day.
Okay, you talk about structural changes. You've made quite a number of them during your the past 4 years of your administration, economic and reform policies. So what we need right now is consistency. That the next president, the next leaders of our country continue what you've already started. So what kind of leader? Who should we vote for in 2028? Who will
Sino daw ang dapat,
what you've
dapat
already started?
susunod?
Maybe you can give us a hint, Mr. President.
Ayan na.
Well, number one, somebody who understands economics.
Yun.
Because
Economista.
that's the first thing.
Economista.
That's the life of the person who understands how to create jobs, who understands how to keep the inflation rate down, who understands how to make food supply a given, something that you can assume. So, and someone who thinks about productivity, because growth is about productivity. How do you make your working population more productive? How do you support them so they work better? How do you fix the education system so they're better trained? How do you make sure that they're healthier? How do you make sure that they don't worry about
Ekonomista raw ang kailangan.
Those are the kind of people that you need, that we need, are the people who actually are thinking about not politics, but how to make the country better. I've always said very early on, again, and even before I became president, I always was watching, and I said, when I was walking around and being around my father, all we would hear is, we are building a nation. We are about nation building. I didn't hear that anymore. So we need to have nation builders, people who want to make the Philippines better, people who actually love the Philippines and love Filipinos and want to make things better. And it boils down to, it might sound a little sentimental or emotional, but that's what you need. And of course, there has to be the element of competency. You know, the love is not it goes a long way, but it's not enough. You also have to know how to do it. You have to have some training, or at the very least, you have to listen to people who have that training. And I'm proud to say we have in government, we have a thing called the Private Sector Advisory Council. And the Private Sector Advisory Council, we meet more or less once a week. And the businessmen who are here know that because we see each other fairly often. And they sit down and we divide it up into different elements, to education, to healthcare, jobs, technology, etc., etc. And we get the best of them, and they sit down, and we basically, government that sits there and listens and asks them, what is it you need from us? That's how it started. Now, government, on this side of the table they come in and they say, have you done your homework? You know, we talked the last week or the last meeting that we had, we were saying that we are going to do this. Have you done it? Or haven't you? And why haven't you? And what's the problem? And it's a very, how do you say, there's a great synergy that comes from that. And it's not to blame and say you're messing up, you know, you're bad, you're etc. You're not smart enough. It's not about that. It's about getting together and say, okay, this worked. Let's do that more. This worked. Okay, how do we make it better? This just didn't work. And then you have to decide, well, maybe it was just a bad idea, so let's do something else. Let's not waste our time. Or we have to do it. It's too important. We have to fix that problem. And that has been so helpful in giving us direction on how government should work, because what we are trying to attract is business. Of course, there's the social side to government, but a big side, we cannot afford the social side if we're not doing well on the business side, on the commercial, on the private, on the revenue side. Let's just put it that way. There are two sides to every balance sheet, so we have to do well on both sides, and that's what the PISAC, what we come to call it the PISAC, has become a very important part of. But it all derives it.
For you, and of course, this was also impacted by infrastructure spending because of the flood control anomalies.
Yeah. The flood control problem, scandal, whatever you want to call it, has certainly played a very large part in that. And unfortunately, it had to be done. It is one of those things where you just had to rip the Band-Aid off. There was no easy way to do it. And otherwise, then the old practices, if it wasn't done, the old practices would continue, and the Philippines will flatline, and that would be, while everyone else is exponential growth, we are flat, and we get nowhere. And so that's why it had to be done. I knew going in that it would be painful, but nothing big and important is not painful. And there are many people who resist just because they are contrarians. And there are people who resist because they are afraid. They say, we cannot change because this is how we've always done it. They're very conservative. And you can't fault them for that. But then that is what we had to face. However, you must also consider that to no small part, to the economic shocks that came in the last part of last year, the weather, the climate change, what happened in the country, the amount of money that we are spending to try and well, first of all, help the victims of climate change, and to now do the adjustment to climate change, i.e., moving settlements away from the areas that have suffered because of climate change. I remember when I was governor, and I was governor from '98 to 2007. When they said that a storm would come in, we knew what to do. We knew where it was going to flood. We knew what air gates would be isolated. We knew where to go. We had a very good idea of what was going to happen. That's no longer the case. Even if you look at the patterns of our weather, before it was very clear. It would come into Bicol, Region 5, and would go up and come out of the Ilocos Norte, usually in Region 1, up north. That's no longer the case. Mindanao has always been seen. There are no typhoons in Mindanao. Now there are. Maybe one or two only a year, but there are typhoons in Mindanao. And so that has been a really, and it impacts us in many ways. Not only in the fact that, you can imagine how heartbreaking it is for someone who has worked very hard to build this bypass road, the 5-kilometer bypass road, and 6 months later it's completely destroyed because the storm came in and destroyed it. And you were sure that we built this road in the right place because typhoons never passed there. And it did, and it destroyed the road. And that's the kind of thing that we have to be dealing with. So we have to be much smarter about the way we do things. But that has been an impact as well. Then the war in Ukraine has had an element. And when Russia first entered the Ukraine, the initial reaction was, well, it shouldn't affect us because we're very far away. But of course, we import wheat from both Russia and Ukraine. So the prices of food went up like this, and we had to find alternative sources to, and of course, it was a seller's market because the supply coming out of those two countries was quite large. So it's a seller's market. You had to pay a higher price, and you had those effects. Again, and then Gaza. You would think, well, they're not oil-producing countries, so it shouldn't really bother our fuel prices, but it did anyway, because there were threats to the Straits of Hormuz, the tankers were hesitant to go in, that sort of thing, so it still became. So it's uncertainty that we are fighting with, uncertainty about climate change, uncertainty about supply chains, uncertainty about geopolitical concerns, about war, about peace. It's uncertainty that we are trying to mitigate, and we do that by, I suppose, like anything, like broadening our base, i.e., again, talking to what we have come to describe as non-traditional trade partners, so that the economy is much less prone to shifts and shocks
mag-isang
that
oras na,
come
tuloy-tuloy,
from the outside over which we have no control.
Walang
It
binabasa.
is indeed a confluence of factors, both internationally and locally, that has impacted the Philippines' GDP growth in the second half of next year. I was talking to some businessmen here, Mr. President. One was a foreign investor, and he said, my concern is about the ease of doing business.
Yes.
And that you have answered. And a local businessman that I spoke to here told me, I'm concerned about who's going to be jailed next.
Yeah. That's perfectly good.
Will there be more people behind bars?
That's
Because we've been waiting for this, Mr. President,
Yun.
since last year.
I don't think that putting people behind bars. Of course, we put people who've been shown.
Trabaho na yan ng judicial body.
Abused the privilege, the authorities, and have taken money that does not belong to them, but belongs to the people, behind bars. But the system needs to change, and that is why we had to do that. I always say, why is it that Filipinos, when they are abroad, do so well? Because the rules are clear. You go, you work hard, you get a little lucky, you'll be fine. I'll tell you one of the stories that has stuck in my mind. I was driving along Camp John Hay when it was still under American administration. I was literally driving along. In front of me was a car with a guy who was eating a hamburger. Okay, and he finished eating his hamburger, and he rolled up the trash. And he put his hand outside the window. He didn't let go of the trash until he left the gate of John Hay, and then he threw the trash because he could do it. In John Hay, the base police would have come running after him and said, "You can't do that. You pay a fine. You'll have to pay for your mistake." And you have to make the rules clear. You have to make, you cannot, and there has to be sanction. When you get it wrong, or when you steal, or when you do something wrong, abuse your power, abuse your authority, you have to pay the price. And that's what we have to establish. And that goes back now to the strength of institutions. And that is the hardest part for a young democracy like the Philippines to develop.
So we're going to see, Mr. President, more incumbents in jail sooner rather than later.
Well, you'll have to ask. You know, most of that now are with the Department of Justice and with the
Ombudsman.
Ombudsman. So I think they will have a better idea of where that's going. I'm worried about so many other things right now, and I have confidence that the DOJ and the Ombudsman will do what needs to be done.
Focusing now on ASEAN, Mr. President, the Philippines is chair,
Yes.
and the theme is navigating our future. From your perspective, what does together mean in terms of practical economic terms?
All right. Well, it's rooted in the recognition, the understanding, and the commitment to ASEAN centrality. And that is very, very important. That we have to work in many ways. We must work as one. I think we share the aspiration. All member states share the aspiration that ASEAN should return to its old role of being a global economic driver. That happened in 2019, that's where we were, and we need to return to that. However, together does not mean that we all do things the same way. We all have different conditions. We all are economically different. They're just population. Just look at our populations. Our populations are so different. The only thing that perhaps we have in common is that we're maritime countries, except for Lao PDR. And so that joint and shared aspiration of returning to that role in the global community is something that we hold in our hearts together. Even achieving that will be done in many different ways, depending on which country you are talking about. But we have to do it in consonance with one another, so that we achieve our own national goals and at the same time achieve the goals that we have for ASEAN. And that again, we must work together, and that's why together.
And final question, Mr. President, what concrete policy reforms would the Philippines
Last
like
question daw
to
ito.
see in basically as it becomes the chair of ASEAN in 2026? What concrete policy reforms?
Well, very soon after COVID, the discussion around ASEAN was that we have to learn from the lessons of COVID. One of the great lessons that we had to do was to make more robust our supply chains. And that's we were going about. And our supply chains to our trade partners around the world. And with all the things that have happened, the effort to make those supply chains more robust and stronger have really run into great obstacles. And so there has been a joint understanding between member states, let's do it ourselves first. And so the supply chains within ASEAN should be strengthened. The way we do business with one another should be strengthened. I came upon a statistic where the commerce, the trade that ASEAN does is only 23%. I think that's the number, about 23% intra-trade. The rest of the 77% is outside of ASEAN, countries going outside of ASEAN. If we could develop that intra-trade within ASEAN, I think that would serve a great purpose. And we're moving in that direction. We talk now about the common grid, the common ASEAN grid. We are slowly coordinating our different agencies so that, for example, procedures for importation is pretty much standardized. That we understand how each country does business and how to deal with them. We understand what the laws are, and we understand what part each country will play once we try to achieve what we aspire for, which is to return as a global force in the global economy.
Wow, we can go on, and can we go on for another hour, Mr. President? Do you still have time? Can you cancel your next appointment?
Easily. Happily.
But Mr. President, we
Oh,
would like to
nahingi
thank
pa na another
you
1 hour
for
kasi
joining us here this afternoon. Wow, what a candid
ayan oh.
President. He answered every question without fail. Mr. President, can you
Ayan,
share with me your notes?
Wala. Grabe, ano? Ayun, oh. Kita nyo, nadinig nyo. Walang binabasa, 1 hour interview, on the spot. Na-explain mabuti, na-expand mabuti, lahat po yan. Yan ang presidente ng Pilipinas. May laman, may alam. Okay? So, tulad na sinabi ko, magaling si President Bongbong Marcos Jr. pang-international. O DDS, nakinig ba kayo? Pero siyempre, yung mga DDS, sarado ang kaisipan yan. Iba pa yung sinasabi. Meron pang ilang-ilang dito ng DDS eh. Ang layo na sila. Kaya hindi kayo naging maunlad ang buhay nyo. Ayaw ko nang tukuyin ang pangalan nyo, ha? Salamat, nanonood kayo. Kaya kayo hindi umuunlad kasi ganyan. Ang ganda ng topic, iba-iba yung sinasabi nyo. Wala naman sa economic forum, wala naman sa editors, at saka sinagot na. Doon sa investigasyon sa flood control. Di ba? Pero pinipilit nyo, nasa ng maleta, nasa ng pera. Mga buwisit kayo, sa totoo lang. Parang hindi kayo Pilipino. Mga nag-aral ba kayo? Ang ganda-ganda nung pinag-uusapan, singit kayo na singit, kung ano mga sinasabi nyo. Nasaan yung big fish, nasaan yung maleta, kung ano mga pinagsasabi nyo. Nag-aral ba kayo? Kung ikinahihiya nyo ang ganitong klaseng pangulo, lumayas kayo sa Pilipinas. Punta kayo sa China. Dahil doon, diktador ang government doon. Kung anong gusto ng presidente ro yun na sinusunod ng milyong-milyong tao ron. Dito sa atin, hindi. Malaya ang mga Pilipino at pumili ng matino. Hindi diktador, hindi mamamatay tao, hindi magnanakaw, hindi puro yabang, wala naman laman. Di ba? Tatawa ka na lang. Anyway, kayo pong mga kapwa ko Pilipino. Kasi kahit DTS kayo, Pilipino rin kayo, di ba? Maliban na lang kung talagang kayo taga-China. Parang ganito eh. Parang nasa eskwelahan tayo, pero kayong nanonood, yung ibang DTS na nanonood, ang isip nyo nasa sugalan, nasa lasingan, nasa tambay. Hindi kayo nakapokus doon sa kung anong topic, doon sa school. Kaya school bukol kayo. Okay? Yung mga nanood ngayon, na ang layo na sinasabi doon sa topic, layo na mga comment doon sa topic, kinukumpara ko, nasa eskwelahan tayo, school bukol kayo. Nasa loob ka ng school, pero ang iyong iniisip, ano bang gagawin kong sugal mamaya? Ano bang pulutan ng inuman sa inuman namin mamaya? Ano bang gagawin ko mamaya pagdating ng bahay? Ang layo. Wala doon sa topic. Okay? Anyway, kakaunti naman kayo. Hindi uunlad ang buhay nyo kung puro kontra, tsaka puro malayo. Ang pinag-uusapan, ekonomiya, kagandahan ng bansa, kung ano-ano yung mga sinasabi. Diba? Si Presidente Marcos, ito yung pwedeng pang 30 taong presidente. Yung iba dyan, kahit isang oras, hindi pwede. Yung mga nangaagaw ng kapangyarihan, kahit isang minuto, hindi pwede. Kasi walang alam. Si Presidente Marcos, pag binigyan mo ito ng kapangyarihan, gaganda ang buhay. Pag mayroong mga tao dyan, binigyan mo ng pagkakataon, isang minuto pa lang babagsak na ang Pilipinas. Yung kandidato nyo, hindi nga pwede sa question and answer. I cannot answer your question. Next. I cannot answer your question. Next. I cannot answer your question. Anak ng... Uya na nga. Paano haharap sa ganyan? ASEAN, Editors, and Economic Forum. Tapos ang sagot, I cannot answer your question. Tanong, I cannot answer your question. Tanong, I cannot answer your question. Yun ang gusto nyo? Kawawa yung mga anak nyo. Ano sabi ng Pangulo? Nagbigay na nga siya ng information eh. Gusto niya kung pwede, Economista ang maging susunod na presidente niya. Hindi niya sinabing abogado, CPA, engineer, doktor, o kung ano man. Gusto niya ay ekonomista. Pero merong ekonomista, abogado pa. Meron doktor, ekonomista rin. Maraming ganon. Merong CPA, ekonomista rin. Ayan. Hindi naman sinabing pure economics o ekonomista. Marami pong ekonomistang may iba pa pang trabaho. Totoo yan. Pagka po CPA at saka ekonomista, ang sarap kausap. May laman at may forecast. Alam niyo bakit? Ito, hindi naman ako magyayabang sa inyo, pero kung ang tingin niyo mayabang ako, bahala na kayo. Maikwento ko lang kasi proud naman ako dahil anak ko yun. Dadalawa po anak ko, para yung lalaki. Isang certified public accountant, CPA, at yung isa ekonomista. Nag-master pa, nag-MBA pa, dyan po sa UB. Dalawa lang yun, para yung lalaki. CPA at ekonomista, pag nag-uusap sila, ang sarap pakinggan. Ang dami nilang idea, ang dami nilang alam. Kasi yung pinag-aralan niya at saka yung forecast nila nandun, hindi ako nakikialam. Hindi ako nasunod nun. Hindi ko tinuro sa kanila at hindi ako nakialam sa kanila kung anong course ang kukunin nila. Ako 100% sumuporta lang kung anong kailangan. Lahat ng kailangan nila, nag-aaral sila. From nursery, elementary hanggang high school, kolehiyo, sumuporta lang ako. Hindi ako nagdikta na ito yung course na gusto ko, ito yung hindi. Pinabayaan ko sila kung anong gusto nila. Suporta lang ako. Ayun, awa ng Diyos. CPA at ekonomista. Dalawa lang po yun. Ha? So, di ko naman sinabing yung anak ko, patatakbin ko presidente dahil sabi ng Pangulo, ekonomista ang kailangan. Hindi. Magaganda yung hanap buhay nila at okay sila. Dalawa lang yun. Wala lang iba. Ayun, di ba? Pinagmamalaki ka lang kasi ganon tayo established. Hindi tayo patay gutom. Na katulad ng paniniwala ng iba. Hindi natin kailangan ng maleta. May sarili akong maleta. Di ba? Hindi ako patay gutom na vlogger. Hindi ako palatay gutom na media. Ha? Kaya ko naman tumayo sa aking kakayanan at sa akin pong ginagawa. Ayun lang yun, di ba? Pag umasa ka sa bulsa ng may bulsa, pag umasa ka sa gobyerno, hindi natin dapat ginagawa yon. Humingi ka lang ng tulong, sumunod ka sa batas, sumunod ka sa gobyerno, ganun. Pero yung maging kalabang ka pa ng gobyerno, ay hindi na ho yan trabaho ng matinong Pilipino. Ha? Ako proud na proud ko po yung pinagmamalaki ko. Dadalawa lang kasi anak ko eh. Pero ang ganda ho ng kanilang ginawa. Dahil sinuportahan ko. O di ba? Walang bisyo, walang alak, walang sugal, wala lahat. Ang bisyo nila kumain lang. Eh lahat naman tayo kumakain. Anyway, nabanggit ko lang ha. Sorry po tao lang. Hindi naman masamang kwento yung gano'n. Kasi yun, proud ako dahil bilang isang magulang. Ayan ha. Kaya ating igabay, suportahan ang ating mga anak dahil ang pag-asa ng bayang ito, ang pag-asa ng ating bansa, I tell you, mula sa kabataan, hindi sa swapang na politiko, hindi sa swapang na sa kapangyarihan, pero wala naman palang laman. God is good all the time. Lord, save the Philippines. Lord, pangalagaan po ninyo araw-araw ng mga oras ang lahat ng Pilipinong matitino, lalo na po ang aking mga followers, subscribers at viewers ng Mike Abe Opinions channel, Facebook and YouTube, siyempre, at MA Pinoy TV. Ha? Yan lang po. Kain tayo, magpahinga, mag-travel pag may pera, gano'n lang ang buhay. Ha? Kain, ha? At mag-enjoy, mag-travel pagka gusto, yun ang buhay. Di ba? Lord, salamat po sa inyo. Thank you po, Lord. Amen. Uy, kain na tayo. Anong oras na? Wow. 1:21 na. Merienda na yata ito. Pero anyway, kahit humahaba, sana ako'y nag-enjoy kayo. Ako naman ay nagbigay lang ng daan at ako'y tulay ng mga balitang totoo. Lalo na sa ginagawa ng Pangulo. Mr. President, mabuhay ka. At ang mga Pilipinong pinaglilingkuran mo. Salamat. Ayun, thank you.